Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with one of our favorite guests. She was on earlier this year, Kate Behr, consultant from here at Core Business Solutions. Glad you could join us again.
Oh, you are too kind. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back.
Well, thank you. Now, this week we're going to talk about continuous improvement tools. But before that, let's learn a little bit about Kate. And I'm going to start with a question. Do you know what your spirit animal is or would be?
Well, I think I have to go with the obvious answer here is a bear.
A bear?
Not only
Okay.
because of my last name, but also because I would love to nap for all of winter if it was allowed.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
Unfortunately, I have to get up in the winter, but if I could, I think that would be my ideal. I would love to hibernate if I was able to.
Mine, I think, would be a cat, but it would have to be stuck in the fence. I don't know if you've ever seen those on like Facebook or whatever, because, I'm kind of independent. I like doing my own thing, but I often get stuck in I do something I shouldn't and I get in trouble and I need help getting out, so I don't dislike cats. I'm more of a dog person, but I think that would be my spirit animal.
They can still, they still resonate with you. I understand that for sure.
Well, that part anyway. well, can you share a little bit about your journey as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides wanting to nap during the winter.
Of course. So I am a consultant with Core Business Solutions. I have been with the company for a little over 2 years now. Started on the auditing team. Prior to that, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for about a decade. Spent some time helping to implement quality management systems within some other smaller businesses, and finally found my way here.
Well, that's great. That's great. And we're glad that you are here. Now, today, you're going to help us walk through some continuous improvement tools. And for newer people in ISO, let's start with this question. What is continual improvement, and why is it so important that ISO made it part of 9001?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Continuous improvement is an ongoing effort to make processes, products, or services better. The idea of continuous improvement, it's not about huge overhauls. It's really about finding areas to make small, sustainable changes over time to, you guessed it, improve.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement is a major theme within the standard because the standard itself is built around the plan, do, check, act cycle, which is a practical and sometimes visual model for continual improvement. Okay. The standard, or your registrar, doesn't expect your quality management system to be perfect because really, who's perfect anytime, right?
Right.
But they do expect to see you as an organization recognizing potential inefficiencies, issues, and risks and taking steps to address them. It's important to keep your QMS alive and evolving to show that continuous improvement over time.
Okay. So now that we know what it is, and that's a really good example, especially talking about Plan, Do, Check, Act or PDCA, what are some of the most commonly used continuous improvement tools within 9001? And how do they fit into day-to-day operations?
Well, some of the most common ones that are, referenced or really integral in ISO 9001 would be that Plan, Do, Check, Act or PDCA, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. Another would be root cause analysis, which is really important with dealing with common issues, trying to get to the bottom of a problem or nonconformance or maybe a not so positive situation.
Okay.
Next would probably be internal audits. They're great to find issues that need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. Finally, corrective and preventative actions. They're necessary and they really let you fix issues and prevent further problems. The standard uses all of them and they really work hand in hand.
All right. So you mentioned PDCA. We talked about it a little bit. How does PDCA or Plan, Do, Check, Act, that cycle guide organizations towards improvement? And what are some common pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, so the PDCA cycle, as I mentioned, the standard's really kind of built around it. So it can really be a beneficial guide to help keep yourself on track. As you mentioned, definitely some pitfalls, as there are with any of the tools that you use in continuous improvement, whether they be new tools or tools that you're using over time. There are some common pitfalls. I think that might happen because the cycle is really deceptively simple. It's really only those 4 key blocks there. Mm-hmm. When you start with plan, as you should in the cycle, you should be defining your process or activity and determining how to measure it or what your objective for that process is. What is the purpose for the cycle that you're going through.
Gotcha.
I think this step is really commonly overlooked because we really tend to jump into do. We want to see some results. We want to take some actions. So we jump into that do phase and we think we already know what we want to do. We don't really need to formally plan it out.
Right.
And that can really throw the whole cycle out of whack because if you don't plan your objectives or your goals, you can't really check them in that final stage of the cycle. And you can end up in an endless loop of doing, never really making it to that very critical act phase, which is restarting and additional continuous improvement where that improvement comes into play.
Well, that makes a lot of sense how people can kind of get stuck and planning is so important to start with.
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
that very first part. Now, you did mention a little bit root cause analysis. Could you walk us through that? And I know that that's a very long process. So can you give us a high overview of how to find root cause when you're dealing with an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I could talk for a whole series about root cause analysis. I'm a little bit of a root cause nerd.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time in past positions investigating root causes, and I don't think anyone would say they love to do it. I really did learn the benefits of finding a true root cause and basing improvement actions off of it. It really helps you use your time efficiently.
Okay.
There's lots of tools out there that can help you. A quick Google search will pull up things like the 5 whys, fishbone diagrams and affinity diagrams, lots of different ways to get there. But I think it is really important to remember a few key principles that apply to any method or any type of investigation that you're trying to do.
Okay. What might those be?
Yeah, so the first would be to be objective. You really can't find a good root cause if you go into thinking you already know why the problem happened. And it's kind of human nature to do that. We all do our jobs every day and we see issues happen and we think we know why this happened. It's really important to clear your mind of some of those preconceived notions.
Now, that can happen a lot, I think, from, I'm a little more of a seasoned individual. I'm not going to say I'm old because I'm not old yet, but I've been around the block and it's so easy to say, I know what that is from experience. And then you're missing that whole point of what's really the issue. And maybe it's something different this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're being objective. It's also really important to explore all the avenues and make connections.
Okay.
Because rarely ever is an issue due to just one thing. For example, if you determine the issue is due to a human error, that human probably didn't make the error for no reason. So there's probably something behind it. Again, that kind of goes into some of those tools. Dig deep into things like tools, equipment, software, things that person who maybe made the error would use. What was really behind the issue that could have caused the error to begin with. That's where some of that preventative actions can come into play.
Okay.
A little further down the line. So just keep digging.
All right.
Also, you should probably keep notes on your investigation, as you're looking into things, talking to different people, learning things from your objective point of view. You might realize that everything you're learning might not contribute to your current root cause, but any good detective, you really should keep track of your clues. You might be able to see another issue waiting to happen and be able to prevent it before it does. So, keep that at the front of your mind. That continuous improvement ideas can come out of anywhere.
That's great. I know that we've talked a lot about things on the podcast where, basically don't find your root cause to be an individual 99.9% of the time. It's usually something within the process of they can do something wrong. And if a part can go on 2 ways, if you're talking about manufacturing and one way is right and one way is wrong, but it still can go in either way. That's a point where you're going to have a problem where there could be a cause. So make sure that you address that within your process. And it's not always just, it was Tom's fault. Well, Tom was never trained on how to do this. So maybe that's why it was Tom's fault.
Exactly. Ask Tom what's going on. And again, having that objective point of view, I think is really important to be able to say, well, hey, Tom probably didn't want to do this the wrong way. So how can we help Tom do it a little bit better next time?
Exactly. Well, these are all great points. The third point I think you talked about was internal audits. And I'm going to ask you, what role do they play in driving continuous improvement under 9001?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming from the internal audit team at CORE, internal audits have a special place in my heart. They're really a great tool to identify improvements because you get to look at your processes through a different lens. We spend a lot of time working our day-to-day doing our job. Everything's going according to plan.
Mm-hmm.
But in an audit situation, you're really looking at things from a bird's eye view. Since processes should be audited by an objective party, either an outsourced internal audit, such as what we have at Core,
Mm-hmm.
or an employee who's not directly involved in the process, you get that viewpoint of those processes and how it functions from that point of view. They may be able to identify areas for improvement that people within the process or management or leadership become blind to over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense where people, they just get used to it. Again, it kind of goes back to that I know what the problem is or I know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Having that objective view from somebody else in the company or outside the company really, really can help.
Exactly.
Well, these are really good points. Now, often after root cause analysis or internal audits, businesses may need to do some corrective or preventative actions. How can those help strengthen an organization's ability to sustain improvements over time?
Yeah, so the corrective and preventative actions themselves really are the continuous improvements in practice or being implemented.
Okay.
And when you document them and you monitor them and review them, they really can become the backbone of your continuous improvement process.
Okay.
They kind of gently nudge or, force maybe. They might force the PDCA cycle. When you plan your actions for your corrective or preventative actions, you implement
Mm-hmm.
or do them. And then you check them through verification of corrective action records. Through verification, you can decide if the issue could use more improvement or if it's time to move on to the next thing. So that's really that act part of the PDCA. So that's really the cycle in real life happening and resulting hopefully in a solved problem and an improved process.
Okay. These are some really great tools. Question you can run into though is, you got these tools using them. What challenges have you found, that organizations face when they are trying to use or implement these tools? And also within that, employees can be resistant to things, especially if it's a check or we're changing a process or we're looking at how you're doing it. How can you overcome some of that resistance as well?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that you face using these tools is that they kind of get a bad rap, right? The internal audits, no one likes to hear they're being audited.
That A word is just
exactly.
terrible. Exactly.
The IRS gave it a really bad name.
Well, they really did, and that was well earned.
They really
did.
It wasn't fair to ISO 9001. They really didn't talk about continuous improvement in their processes, but they really can kind of get a bad rap. Audits can feel like unwanted criticism. Root cause investigation and corrective actions can start to feel like a punishment. And they really aren't intended to be any of those things. They are tools. So it's really important for management or the team spearheading improvement initiatives to be consistent in their messaging and their approach with these tools.
Okay.
Again, it all kind of interconnecting, right? Being objective, not finger pointing or, placing blame where you don't need to place blame.
Right.
Have discussions surrounding that true intent. Explain what they are. Explain why you're doing them. The intent being to improve, and not only to improve for customers, but to improve the day-to-day for everyone in the organization by making things more simple or more efficient. An improvement can come not just from an issue or an audit finding, but from an employee who thinks that here's a different way to do my day-to-day task that I think would be a little bit better or makes a little bit more sense to me, and taking those into account, those kinds of suggestions.
Yeah, getting them involved is probably a good way to get buy-in and realize, hey, we're not looking at you, and this isn't a performance review. This isn't whether you're going to get a raise or not. This isn't whether you're on thin ice. Occasionally that might be the case, but that's not what this purpose is for. It's to how can we improve.
Exactly. So it's really kind of getting rid of those preconceived notions, having people within the organization feeling like they're in trouble. And again, like you said, maybe they are. But again, the intention is really for the improvement to happen and to improve for everybody.
Right.
It's really also helpful to get people involved. Like I mentioned, taking suggestions from the employees that you work with or your coworkers, or even from customers, providing training for employees on corrective actions and auditing techniques so they can kind of see why you're doing what you're doing or what you're doing, where they can understand a little bit better that, again, you're just following this plan, do, check, act cycle. You're not here to point fingers or to place blame on anybody else. So,
and that can really tie into getting ISO and those pillars from within it of 9001 into your everyday business and how just how part of how you function.
Absolutely. You know, the more helping hands in this process, I think is always better. I really don't see a downside to it. The last suggestion I would give companies working on continuous improvement and trying to overcome some hurdles or roadblocks initially is to make sure you follow up with the results of your improvement activities.
Okay.
Otherwise, they just seem like dead ends. You know, someone will participate in an investigation or an internal audit, and then they just don't hear anything again. Then it doesn't really seem like it's a beneficial tool. So,
well, that was much to do about nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I spent a day in an audit and now what? So, you know, really following up and talking about lessons learned and action steps and so on and so forth. I think that communication piece and the messaging piece on the improvement tools will really be beneficial in helping people understand why it's happening and how they can help get involved.
Awesome. Well, these are some great tools. I think something I want to ask that might seem a little bit apparent, but what trends are you seeing, AI, shaping companies and when they're looking to apply continuous improvement under 9001?
Yeah, you called it. AI is kind of creeping into all aspects of our lives, right? So I think if it's used the right way, it can really supplement those existing improvement tools and the ones that we just talked about. Mm-hmm. It can really help maybe be an objective kind of sounding board.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, as AI and other new technologies become not just a thing of the future, but are applied in real life as we're seeing more and more, it seems like every day, it might be beneficial to consider how those things might impact your customers' requirements and how you can start planning ahead and considering improvements to accommodate them now rather than waiting for them to catch up to you.
Yeah, I know the large language models, which ChatGPT, those type of things. I've had really good luck with just sometimes asking it a question when I need a little guidance. Hopefully your team has a management representative in dealing with that, an MREP and somebody who's in charge of quality. But if you're a smaller business, sometimes this AI stuff can really help when you need that sounding board, like you said, or when you just need a little of an idea. Sometimes I'll be like, you know, trying to do a podcast and I'm like, man, I'm just not coming up with anything ideas, right. You know? And I'm like, okay, block. Yeah, exactly. And I'll say, hey, you know, ChatGPT, can you give me some? Oh, okay. And I don't necessarily use everything it gives me, but it gives me a starting point. Exactly. To think about it sometimes too.
100%. I think pro tip, my favorite use of ChatGPT is I ask it to teach me how to do things rather than to do things for me. So like with Excel, it teaches me how to make spreadsheets. And so now I'm growing some of my skills in Excel rather than having the AI create a spreadsheet for me. I want to learn how to do it.
Oh, that's a really good idea and a great way to look at it. Well, this has really been insightful today. Lots of great tools, lots of great examples. Do you have any last thoughts? I know you mentioned before, that just make sure that you review and go over stuff with people. Any other last thoughts you might have?
Yeah, I think, like I said, the communication piece within the organization will really help grow improvement throughout and help people get involved, help people participate, and inspire them to look for improvements in their own day-to-day work rather than just being subjected to the improvements that are placed upon them.
So that would probably be like the fourth tool, getting buy-in and really using people's ability, their intelligence, and their history, what they bring to the table, and use that to drive some of your continuous improvement.
Yeah. Use the expertise of your colleagues and your employees. And again, even your customers, they might have some really interesting ideas for continuous improvement that they might be really happy with those results down the road.
Awesome. Great time today. Really, really appreciate you talking to us, giving us some really good tools and some ideas. Really appreciate you being here again, Kate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I hope to be back soon.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have you on again. And we want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope it's been informative for you. If you're looking for more information about Core Business Solutions, as we're now an LRQA company, and how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, looking at maybe some continuous improvement things in ISO, and even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit us on our website at www.thecoresolution.com. If you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, please be sure to do so, and that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.